Hello everyone, in this video I will be discussing how I created a context manager for Robolink's CoDrone EDU platform. So first of all, why did I do this? So I noticed during the tutorials that the drone pair and drone close operations appeared in every script. Basically, anytime you want to interact with the drone, you need to pair with it and pair it with the computer and close the connection once you're done with it. And what I noticed is if there's some error in between those two steps, so if you pair the drone and then some exception is raised before the drone connection closes, well then the drone connection won't close, right? So I wanted something that could safeguard against that, as well as automate the pair and close operations for me, so I wouldn't have to worry about it. And that's basically the wheelhouse of a context manager. So context managers perform actions that are common in some operations. So typically in file operation, it'll open and close the file for you. So I wanted to do something similar with the CoDrone. And so I'll just go through how I did that. So basically, for context manager, the most important parts are the enter and the exit methods, right? But since it's the class, you need to initialize it, and I basically inherit from the official drone class, right? So I have access to all of the methods that were defined within that class. So I basically just call the init method of the drone class and use that as the init method for this class, which I call tDrone, and you can call it whatever you want. So that's the initialization. Then when you enter, this method here is what runs when you write the with statement. So once it gets to this point, the enter statement runs. And what I do there is I just pair the drone. I set it to sleep for a little bit. That way everything can work the way it needs to work. And then I return the reference to the object. And what that does is it allows me to name the object and then use it in within the context, right? So that's the enter function. And then the exit method is basically what you want to happen whenever you're exiting the context. So whether it's an error or the program was successful, this always runs. If you're familiar with the try, except, finally blocks, this is basically like the finally block. So what I do is I have the drone land, because if there is an error and you don't land the robot, it'll remain in the air. It'll remain airborne. And so I have it land. Right now I set the drone LED to red just so whenever it lands, I know that there's a visual indication of it being shut down. But you don't have to do that. So that's just a personal thing. And then you close the connection. And the reason I didn't add a time delay in this method is because the land method automatically, like, it sleeps already. So I didn't need to do it. So, and then I just have some, this is for error handling. So like if there is an exception, it'll print out the type of error that it is, the value, and the traceback. And basically, if you want all of the methods or like the references I use to do this will be in the description. So if you want more in-depth knowledge of like why, for example, this is used, it'll be in those sources. But just to recap, that is the context manager. So you initialize the class and then you enter. So you pair the drone, you return a reference to the object that you created. And upon exiting, you land the drone, you close the connection. If an error occurred, you print the errors. That's it. And then for me personally, I just decided to overload the del method because, and this is the method that runs when the object is garbage collected. And basically this is defined as, it calls close in the drone class. So originally it'll call close, but since I'm calling it in the exit function, there's no need to do it again. So I just replaced it with the print statement just so I know, hey, this is being garbage collected and the object's about to be removed from memory. But you don't have to do that. And then you'll see these functions here. This is just something I did when I was testing So instead of actually having to interact with the drone, I decided to replace the methods with just some print statements and toggling a Boolean. That way I had some visual indication that, hey, this is working, without having to actually interface with the hardware. So yeah, that is the context manager, and I'll just show you how to use it. So because the context manager that I define inherits from the drone class, it has access again to all of the methods defined within the drone class. So basically in this program, so you declare the drone, you create an instance of the drone class, and it's really important that you have these parentheses here, because that means you're creating an instance of the class rather than referencing the class itself. So basically just make sure you have those parentheses there. So with drone, tDrone parentheses as, and you give it a name, then you can use that name to interact with, use whatever methods that the drone has. So in this case, I set some parameters. I changed the drone LED, which I actually don't need to do because, or I could just change it to a different color. This is a method I define that just makes the drone hover until you create you press the correct key, and then you can define your own functions and pass in the reference to the drone object. And so here you'll see this is drone movements. It takes in a tDrone instance, and then it performs all of the movements that I need. But you'll see that there's no pair, there's no close, there's no exception handling, because all that's done in the context statement, or the initialization of the context manager. So yeah, it makes developing for this platform much easier, and hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you understand how I did it. It's not too bad, but again, I have all of the sources that I used to create this context manager in the description below, so definitely check those out, because they were super helpful. Thank you for watching.